I love it. I was waiting for it to get between the 1 and the 2, and it just did it. I was watching. I'd like to call the meeting to order. If you would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Tanya, would you roll call, please? You don't have to run. Heart.
Jackie Mack, our chair.
Present.
Jack Eaton.
Here.
Gary Bridget.
Here.
Michael Melton.
Here.
Kit Roney. Here. D'Angelo Cottrell.
Here.
Star Marset.
Do
Jim
we have
Subject?
anyone
Here.
on
I'll look on to you in just a second. Jim Subject.
Here.
Thank you. Brent McFall.
Here.
Jeff Kaler. Cynthia Zvigan.
Here.
Norman Lund.
Here.
Rico West.
Here.
And Deanna Jones. Here.
Thank you. I need a motion to approve the minutes from March 28th and April 11th, General Obligation Bond Committee meetings.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Deanna will explain the minutes from this meeting and will not be provided, I guess.
That's explaining it.
Okay.
So because this is our last meeting, you will not have minutes to approve for this meeting. Tanya will go forward and do her usual process with those. That's it.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. All right. As Deanna stated, this is our final committee meeting and our roles and responsibilities will change. Please welcome City Attorney Scott McCoy to give us some legal reminders as we prepare for the upcoming November election.
Well, thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. Again, my name is Scott McCoy. I'm the city attorney. I don't have as exciting of a presentation as I had at the beginning. I have no slides, but it's just a brief comment about where we stand today and then what things the committee can do moving forward. So this is our last formal meeting here. On May 7th, there's a workshop presentation to the City Council on your recommendation. May 21st, we'll have council action on that recommendation. At that time, we anticipate that the council will approve a resolution that will disband the committee or sunset it, and then the formal work of the committee will be over. So until then, May 21st, you still have to labor under the onerous rules that I laid out to you before, which is no communicating, no discussions about matters. Of course, nothing else is going to come before the committee in terms of action or anything, but still want to be mindful of the open meeting law. And so all of the things that I told you about, I warned you about back in February, those still stand. But once we hit May 21st and the committee is disbanded, really the cuffs are off, so to speak, and the committee can do as they please in terms of discussing the GO bond, your deliberations in here, and then also kind of doing the heavy lifting that's going to need to happen in order to get this GO bond supported in the community. So some of you may or may not know, but there's a statute on the books that applies to political subdivisions, of which the city of Buckeye is, and that statute prohibits the city from using city resources to influence the outcome of an election. So we are really limited in terms of what the city can talk about in terms of the bond. And Doug just went through this in Goodyear. It's hard thing to do, to sit here as a community and see some of the things that are said, but really all we can talk about are facts, just factual things. We can't get into opinion, we can't get into persuasion, and we certainly can't get into advocating for or against the bond. And so oftentimes with these GO bond committees, what we did early on was try to identify those folks in the community that we thought drew some water in town and that would be able to kind of carry the message forward once the committee disbanded. And so really what the committee is authorized to do after you're no longer a committee is anything any other private citizen could do in support or opposition to any ballot measure. And that's what this ultimately will be a ballot measure. It'll show up on the ballot, and you guys know all of that. And so some of the things that committees, members, former committee members, because that's what you'll be on May 21st, can do, is the whole kind of range of ways in which you can influence an election. You could start a PAC, a political action committee. There's a requirement that you have to register it. You can solicit funds to support whatever side of the bond equation you might be on. You can publish materials, signage, certainly can talk to people. Service groups are a great way to get the message out. Rotary, Kiwanis, those sorts of groups, churches, business meetings, any chance that you have an opportunity to, and you're comfortable, talk about the bond and the benefits associated with it. Our hope is that you would do that because we can't. And so you'll see, we'll put out some materials. We have a terrific marketing communication team, and you met Andy DeChance who runs that. They are already working on some messaging in terms of, based on your recommendations and what we think the council's going to do, putting together some materials that will help at least explain what the bond is, and we can do that without repercussion. But again, we can't say, some of this bond money is going to go to improve the streets, which everybody agrees is a great use of taxpayer money. We can't say that. We can only say this bond money will be used in part to repair the streets. And then, what that impact is, folks are kind of on their own to decide. So I don't really have a whole lot more to talk about other than that. I just wanted you to know that until May 21st, we're still a committee and as such an instrumentality of the city of Buckeye. But once May 21st hits, and by the way, I hope at least some of you can show up to the May 21st City Council meeting. That's awesome, and I think the council would like to congratulate you and thank you for your support. And if I haven't done that, I will do it now. It's a long haul, right? Everybody here has lives and important things that they need to do, and you've showed up faithfully for the last however many weeks it's been, and devoted your time to an effort that may end up. Hopefully it ends up being a great outcome, but along the way, folks throw sharp elbows. Folks are going to have some opposition to this, and we know that's going to happen. But we hope that you can talk about your experience when you're out in the community and support your decisions and recommendations you're making to the City Council. And I'll wrap it up right there. Happy to answer any questions, though, if anybody has any. There's one.
I have one question.
All right, sir.
So, I think I know the answer, but I want to hear from you.
All right.
So if, let's say, for example, that a member of the Buckeye City Council is holding a community meeting. Can I go to that community meeting and advocate for or against the bond issue? Or is that a city-sponsored event?
Okay, so that's a great question. I'll repeat it. The question was, if the city is hosting some sort of an event or a gathering, can folks like you in the committee or members of the public show up and advocate on behalf of the GO bond? And the answer to that question is, well, it kind of depends. Yes. As is usual. Right. But I would say generally you would be safe to do that. We don't want to be in a position where we're accused of, we've got shills planted everywhere and they show up. And so I have been in situations where folks will show up at a call to the public, city council meetings, and they'll start talking about an election matter, and in fact there's a case in Arizona where this happened, where somebody showed up, started talking about an election. It was a bond issuance, not a city bond issuance, but and the Attorney General came down pretty hard on that community. So the answer is you can probably do that. You may want to check. So if you find yourself in that situation, and if it's an organic kind of situation, let me give you an example. If you're at a Councilman Goodman oftentimes has meets with his constituents. I think it's quarterly or maybe even more frequently. If you showed up at that and asked a couple questions about it and then said, I really support the bond issuance, and you're a speaker from the public, you would probably be okay.
Well, let me draw a distinction. So
Okay.
I happen to live in Councilmember Goodman's district.
Okay.
And so I could go as a private citizen, and if he's answering questions, I could say, Councilor Goodman, what do you think about this? Or give me some facts, and I'd like to advocate on behalf. but I probably could not go there as part of the program.
That's probably right. And really, it's depending on what it is, too. And so if Councilmember Goodwin is out and he's, a cup of coffee with a council member, and he's sitting over at there's no city resources being used. And so you're free to say what you want, and Council Goodman is free to advocate on behalf of the GO bond as well. The council and the mayor can take positions, and you'll see it. We already have a position statement prepared for the arguments that are going to be published in favor of, and the city council has come out in favor of that. I think that's unanimous. Every single council person signed off on that messaging, and we can do that. It's just as long as we can't put that message on our website and splash it all over the world and promote it and YouTube it and stuff like that. But so I hope I answered your question.
Yeah,
Kind of.
be careful, is sort of.
Be careful, but certainly, in these service groups, that Rotary and Kiwanis. Right. So here's what you will see. So if we are invited to Mayor Meck's Rotary Club, and he invites Doug to it, Doug's presentation on the GO bond is going to be very, very limited because he's a city employee, and he will only be able to talk about facts. But if you invited Councilmember Goodman to talk about the GO bond, he could have a much more robust conversation and actually come out in favor of and say supportive things of it. So there's a distinction a lot of folks aren't aware of there. But the city employee is not a good, don't invite us to the service club because we're not going to be able to say much. Invite the council members and the mayor. They can say a lot more.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, sir.
I was thinking I could call an HOA meeting and have the police chief and fire chief explain what the projects are, not advocate for them, but just tell, they can do a lot better than I can.
The question was, can a private organization have a meeting and city staff could come and explain what the proceeds of the bond would be used for? Yes, we can. So it would just be sticking to the facts, can't offer an opinion or advocate or persuade, but yes, absolutely. So if the question was, hey, what are you going to use that $175 million for? Larry Hall, our Director of Public Safety, could get up there and say, well, we have plans for
Yeah, you could cover both, though.
training center and talk about it. And he can talk about the need. We haven't built a new facility in 20 years or whatever. We can do that. That's all facts. But he said, then he said, this is going to provide the, state-of-the-art best thing for the city. This, you'd be a fool not to vote for this.
That's beyond.
Yeah, slipping past where we need to be. But that was a good question. Thank you.
That works for me.
Any other questions? All right, well, on behalf of the city, at least on the management side, really appreciate everybody's effort and are grateful that you had an interest and wanted to help the city out. We really, really appreciate it. All right, thank you. Back to you, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, as this committee sunsets, I want to personally thank each of you again. I did last week, but I want you to know that I really appreciate your time and your dedication, strategic perspectives that you've had on how to successfully move this bond forward. That's what we were for, and you've done that, and I really appreciate it. We didn't have any fights, and nobody disagreed. I mean, it was a good committee to be on, and I enjoyed being on it. The next step for us is to discuss what resources are available and what type of educational outreach materials we'll need if council approves the call for the election for the board. So Doug, would you bring us up to date?
Yep. So I'm going to be talking about the committee. I'll go through real quickly, recapping the committee recommendation. This will be part of the presentation that we do to the City Council on May 7th during a work session. That work session's at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and just like the 21st, if you can make it, great. You'd be recognized, and it'll be a good showing. If not, it's not a problem whatsoever. We're going to carry the water forward on this. So this is part of it. I'm also going to have Paul Bentz out from High Ground to go over the results of the poll. Since the poll does have a big part of the recommendation, we thought council hearing that information directly was something that would be very informational for them as well. So committee recommendation, projects located throughout the city, 3 project categories, 2 ballot questions. Council will have this map available to them. I'll go over with them the 2 questions, the tagline version of the questions. Shell would be authorized to issue $282 million of GO bonds for street, transportation, and public safety improvements. And then the second one, Shell Buckeye be authorized to authorize $16.8 million in GO bonds for park and rec improvements. Below that, I showed the three different categories. What we were considering at the beginning, at the $541,300,000, zeros matter. And then to the recommended of 298.8, and then the breakout of the question. On the recommendation, I'll go through each one of these categories with them to kind of show them the positive survey results at the $150 million, that the public safety question was the highest ranked on the survey, and that the funding of the projects are the top priorities that we looked at were safety and immediacy of impact, that we could really start going on those. Listing of the projects available, letting the council know that that is $137 million, the additional $30 million, or any other cost over and above that 160, over and above that 137 on the GO bond issue would have to come from other funding sources, or we'd have to scale the project. So the bond issue itself would cover 137. It would go towards these projects. Other funding will be needed for these projects. Streets and transportation, $145 million. Also very positive results on the survey at $150 million, so right in the range of the survey. Streets and traffic questions strongly supported. They were 56%, public safety was 58%. And again, safety and immediacy of impact. These are something that as soon as we issue bonds, people will start to see stuff happening out in the community, and that's something that was extremely important. And then the final category was parks and recreation, which would be its own question. Survey results were not positive for $100 million, which gets us to the lower dollar amount of the $16.8 million. We wanted to make sure that parks was not forgotten because it's extremely important. Bringing it forward with a lower dollar amount, we're hoping that the community would be supportive of that, and maybe that was a piece of why the survey results were not positive at that $100 million number. So that is what is an overview of the recommendation that we'll be doing to council. I'll have a lot more, I'll have some more detail on it and showing them a little bit on the impacts of the property assessed valuation, property tax. One of the things that the committee decided not to give them tax rate guidance. So one of the things that I'm going to have to get from council is tax rate guidance, because when we put together the publicity pamphlet, that we have to actually put in a debt service schedule with a rate that is in that debt service schedule. If council doesn't give me property tax rate guidance, then it would be the assumption we issued all 298 at one time. Property tax would go up $1.06 immediately. And I don't think that looks good in a public publicity pamphlet. So council will be giving us guidance on that. We'll go through some of that information as well. As Scott just talked about, the city, the committee itself is no longer a committee after the 21st. So you guys are going to be able to free to advocate, say what you want, do what you want. The city is still going to have those restrictions on us. We are, however, going to do a lot of outreach. And I wanted to talk to the committee about what our plans for outreach are, and then also hear from you any ideas that you would have of what we can do to, in addition to what we've listed, what other things that we can do to get the word out, to get the message out of the election, of the projects on there. What kind of things helped you decide to vote in favor of it? What kind of things what kind of things made you vote opposed to what the recommendation is, so that we could address some of those things in our factual, educational-based information. So we'll go over the city resources, election information. That'll be a key piece of it as well. No matter how much we educate somebody, if they're not registered to vote, it absolutely does not matter. And that's the timing of this, is we're going to really push a lot of stuff out about just pure voter registration. You need to be registered in order to vote. Timing comes into play on that. If you do a lot of educational stuff in June, by the time November comes around, people have completely forgotten about it. So we'll go through some of the timelines that we're looking at as well. So this is a slide where we're going to spend the majority of our time tonight, is what are some of the election outreach tools that the city has available and plans on using? One is the website. 2 is Eye on Buckeye. Everybody's familiar with the Eye on Buckeye, our newsletter that goes out, and we're planning on dedicating 2 issues to the projects that are included in the bond issue. One that will be earlier on that will talk about registering, the importance of a bond, what the bond includes, and then one that'll be timed in October, which would hit all of our residents at the same time as publicity pamphlets as a way to complement the information that is in the publicity pamphlet of here's what the bond issue is, here's what the projects are, here's what it means to you, so that the timing of those hits every single resident in the city of Buckeye as well. We plan on doing videos where we have not Bill, as dynamic as Bill is in all of his presentations. Bill will not be part of the video, but we will have our chiefs. We will have our chiefs in talking about this public safety projects. We'll have our transportation people talking about the mobility and the transition in congestion and all the other things. We'll have Miranda talking about the Parks and Rec project. So we'll have videos that will be out there for everybody to see what that information is and available for the committee members to refer to and to push out as well, and then to also get some ideas off of. Comment forms, anytime there's public meetings, we'll have the same thing like with the emails that we had for the committee where people can send in emails and let us know what their thoughts are. There's going to be social media posts where we're putting out information. And that's where it's going to get really tough for the city is one of the things we experienced in Goodyear with our social media posts on the bond issue was residents who were opposed to it would go on there, you're just stealing, you're just wastefully spending this money and increasing our tax dollars and you don't care. We can't respond to that. So the city was not responding to that. We did have instances where former members of the bond committee did go onto Facebook and respond to those things as a private citizen, as a PAC that was formed on there. But the city can't respond to those kind of things. We're putting the information out there. We are going to be providing talking points for all of our city staff. So if the police chief, fire chief get invited to somebody's HOA, they're going to have talking points on those projects. They're going to be able to add their own color and flavor to it, but it'll give them some specific talking points. We're going to have that with all of our city employees. So if somebody asks them, they will know what the projects are. They will have the common messages. Collateral information, handouts are awesome, swag, different things like that. When we have 4th of July event, we'll be able to have stuff there with bond committee information for people to hand out, for us to hand out to give to people so that it's more of an awareness kind of thing. When we are going out and talking to HOAs, Rotaries, different things like that, we will have information that we can hand out in the library. It would be sitting there for people to come in and grab. So just anything that we can do to get that information out there at different community events I started mentioning. We also plan on doing utility billing stuffers for the people that still receive a paper mail. We will insert information about the bonds, about the projects in those utility billing. I actually asked this week to see what the cycles are. We do 6 cycles a month, and I asked what the cost would be to include a mailer in that for everybody. To hit all 6 cycles, so anybody who gets billed from the city of Buckeye, it's $208. So I'm like, well, that's pretty cheap. So as long as people open it up and read the mailers. We will also, those who are on mail, our email, get the electronic bill, we will be able to send out in there a link where they click to that will bring them to the website. So we'll get that information out for anybody who has a utility bill as well. So those are some of the ideas that we as staff have already came up with and thought about. And what I would really like to hear is what are some other ideas that the committee has? What are some of the reasons that we had no votes on some of this? What's some of the reasons behind that we could possibly adjust in some of this educational information? Some of you that voted yes, why? And what can we do? So any ideas at all? So with that, I'll open it up to discussion from the committee.
On the video, so is the video going to be shot at those projects that are being recommended on site with talking points from a knowledgeable staff member talking about that project?
That's the idea. We will definitely have to make sure that we balance that with that it doesn't come across as salesy
Yeah.
or advocating for it. But yeah, it's like if you have a transportation planner standing in front of a road that pinches down and you see a long line of
Exactly.
traffic, that's a fact,
Yeah.
100%, so,
And those videos, they will be posted on the website?
correct.
Is there any other type of sites that those videos are going to be posted on?
It
Within
would-
social media?
Yeah, social media sites, so the city has a Facebook page, an Instagram page, LinkedIn, all of those kind of things, we would be posting those in. The idea is smaller bite-sized videos, not real long ones, because if anybody's attention span is like mine, after 30 minutes, or after 30 seconds, I move on to the next one. Yes, sir.
And just to follow up on what Cynthia was saying, we heard about demographics several meetings ago and who's going to vote and, who is expected to vote in this meeting. And I'd like to focus on social media. I think we talked about the voters, the older voters, I guess, for lack of a better word. They're more than likely going to turn out to the polls like they normally do and vote. But I think to capture the attention of the younger voters, we know where they're at. They're on social media. And, they don't have much time for much else, websites or going through their mail or whatever. So if we're looking to target that younger demographic, I really think there needs to be a detailed focus on social media. Like you mentioned, Doug, with those short videos and, just constantly putting that out and answering their questions. I know I've got young kids, I've got grandkids, and I know that's where they get all their information.
Exactly.
Question and comment. Comment first on the social media. If we're gonna do that, we need to have some designated people to respond, because my experience in political campaigns is if you do not deny negative information, people say if he's not denying it, it must be true.
Right.
So if we've got people saying that this is a ripoff from the city and people are gonna benefit from this and it's not gonna benefit the city at all, and we don't respond to that, people are gonna say, oh my God, there's people on the take on here. So that's dangerous to do that. There needs to be somebody that's committed to responding to those saying that's not the case, this isn't true, this is what the actual fact is, and maybe over the next couple to 4 weeks we can figure out who that would be. My question would be, and this is not an advocacy at all, because I'll tell you, there are some politicians, if they told me it were raining and I were standing in it, I'd call the weather service to confirm it. That being said, is there any thought to having our representatives and senator come out, because they're not tied to the city directly? They're not city employees, they represent us, they're clearly popular enough to get elected, so is there any thought to having them do a PSA or something like that, saying, Buckeye's got this bond committee going, we've reviewed it, it sounds like a terrific idea, we would encourage you to vote for it? Again, not advocacy, that's a question.
We have not talked about that at all, so that's definitely something we could reach out and talk to some of them to see if it's something they would be interested in
Yeah, they
doing.
usually run unopposed, so it's not, there shouldn't be any fear about them losing because they've taken a stance like this.
And if it gets to the point where they want to advocate for it, it's definitely something that we could put them in touch with any group that's formed by the committee to
Yeah,
do
again, just a
anything as
question,
well.
just something to consider.
Yeah, sounds good. Yes, ma'am.
Is next door in that realm of social media? It's the community websites, which you would definitely need representation because
Every nut in the world is on that.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. It is one that I've asked Annie if we have a Nextdoor account, because you have to have an account on it to be able to do stuff. And that's definitely an area that we would want to reach out, because people are definitely on Nextdoor.
Yes.
And they're negative.
And you want to, you definitely need informed information on there, because it can go crazy like a wildfire, and that would
Exactly.
affect a lot of the voting.
Yes. And I think related to that somewhat is, we've also talked about contacting HOAs And if any HOAs have any community center, different things like that, where we can put information, that we would be open to be doing that as well, and getting information out there, getting it to the HOAs that can send it out through their own emails, email distribution lists, and so on as well. Because as many people as we can reach, that's really the goal.
I would ask what other, you mentioned next door. I don't do any of those things, whatever they are, but are there others? Somebody mentioned Facebook. There's next door Facebook. What's another?
It's a community.
No,
what
what are
other
some
ones?
other?
Some other ones.
Yeah.
Instagram,
TikTok.
LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if TikTok's going
TikTok, I hear what you're saying.
Yes.
It's illegal.
I mean, everybody's talking at once, so I can't tell what each one of those are. Are there 5 or 6 of them? Just
Yep.
one person
At
mentioned?
least.
5 or 6
What
major.
are they? Yeah, and my question, what are they? What are they called?
They're all
Social media.
computer apps that everybody goes on to get information.
No, what are the
No,
names
no,
of
my
them? So
question
Doug already
is-
answered
You're-
that.
The main,
We're saying,
Yeah.
you're saying next door. What other type, I'm gonna call it an app? Are there other types of next doors? I mean,
Yeah.
there's a.
Well, there,
Snap-
within Facebook itself, there's also community pages.
Right.
If I'm answering your
No,
question correctly.
no,
I don't-
yeah,
You
so,
know,
Yeah.
I'm not
what
sure.
do
yeah.
I don't even know what I'm asking.
Social media sites, social media sites, it's Facebook, Instagram,
There.
LinkedIn, Nextdoor.
Yeah, there.
TikTok, if it's still
Which one-
around.
Which one of
Right.
those would be good?
All of them.
All of
All
He
of
has
them.
all of them.
All of
yeah.
them.
And that's what you're referring to as social media?
correct.
All of it,
Correct.
okay.
All of
I-
them with the
I don't know.
exception of
I don't
TikTok.
even know what those are.
Right, which may not be
Right.
around much longer.
Right.
You don't run for that, and then it gets,
So we have LinkedIn now?
yeah.
We do have LinkedIn. Yeah, we do have LinkedIn. I've got to find if we have the next door. We definitely have Facebook, Instagram. We do not have a TikTok account, and it's not something we're going to get into, so. Yes,
I
sir.
know Buckeye PD is on next door.
Yes, and that's in addition to the city website and the city social media sites. Our police and our fire and our community services all have their own as well, and we will definitely be putting them on those also. Yes, sir.
Doug, this is going to be on the general election, so it's going to be a very busy ballot.
Correct.
Can you find out whether we're going to be on the third page or the second page or wherever? And wherever that is, let people know where to look for it, because a lot of voters look at they stop. They look at the first page and they stop.
Yes.
And they may have voted for it, they just don't go that far. So I think we have to do something to let people know where to find the ballot measure.
And I think that's a great point, and I'm 99% sure this is moving forward, but the plan for the ballot is that the first page is all local elections, and then the second and third page will be the federal and state, with the recorder's office doing that because it makes it easier from an administrative standpoint to know that the unique page is page 1, 2, and 3.
That would be good.
Statewide is going to be the exact same thing. It's such a great idea.
Yeah.
That's why I hesitate on saying that's what it's going to do, because they'll probably not do it.
Idea, right?
But if that works, I mean, it works just from an administrative standpoint, it's awesome. And then from our personal standpoint, it's like it puts our stuff right up on top. And we do get to choose our order of questions. So when it goes on the ballot, it will be the public streets and public safety first, and then Parks and Rec second. From what Paul had said, you always lead with your strongest question.
Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
News releases, how would that really be effective for our local community?
Reporters are lazy, and a lot of times they get their articles when it's a slow news week from what our news release is. So when we put out a news release, the West Valley View, the Independent, sometimes they just grab those and reprint it and slap their name on the end of it. So it's just another way to get the message out, to get the media attention on it. Yes, sir.
Don't know if it's a question or comment. I think a lot of this is gonna rise and fall on that educational process of assessed value versus what I think my house is worth. And, boy, it's just, even if you went with the graphic that shows where on the assessor's bill the number we're talking about is, might be helpful. Because people remember the values on it, but if you had something that directed, no, you're down here at the bottom, that's the number we're talking about. Anything to improve that, it's gonna be tough.
I think that's a great idea, and I think one of the things we can do is on our website, try to get it so that there's a link that says click here for your assessed value, and then they type in and it brings it to the specific spot on the Maricopa County website where if they put their address in or their name in, it'll pop up and we can tell them where to look for that information. We've looked at several homes to try to see if there was some standard that we could use for people to think about, but it all depends on how long you've been in the house. I actually looked up this last weekend, the White Tanks Conservancy had a tour of Verado backyards, and I went to this extremely nice one. So, and the homeowner had been in the house since 2011, so I like, all right, let's see what that looks like. And I went online, brought up their house. The full cash value was $890,000. The assessed value was $405,000. So that is a huge difference. And I looked up another one and they were almost neck and neck, and it's because somebody had bought a brand new home and moved into it. So there's such a disparity, but if we can get it really quick where it's click here, look for this on this spot, and then do it, I think that'll help a lot.
Really gonna have to educate people to go there.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's,
Because I'm just living my life and I'm, I'm not gonna click and click and click unless I've got some pretty specific instruction how to get there.
other thoughts? Any information for those that voted no on this? Is there any information that would have helped you flip that over? Or I mean, I know some of the discussion was just the dollar amount was too high. That's the kind of stuff that at this point we can't educate on on whether it's too high or not. But was there anything else from an informational standpoint that would have helped anybody with that you think we could do better?
Well, I voted no, just simply because I think it is such a huge hurdle to pass that large of a bond issue when you haven't been out before the public for a long time. So you might make it clear that, this is not additive onto things Buckeye's been doing. It's new.
Right.
And help make it clear that when you're talking, it's a fixed dollar amount that they're authorizing, so the rate could vary and probably will go down based on your assumptions because of you have. So
correct.
I know you have to be careful about stating that, but some way of helping people understand that it's up there. You mentioned $1 if everything went on, and I think the survey had support at maybe 50 or 60 cents.
50 or 60 cents, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the two very different numbers.
Yeah.
I think another thing would be to a lot of people will have no idea what a general obligation bond is. And I think talking about it in terms of it's a financing tool for major capital projects, just like you borrowed money to buy your first house. Because you didn't have all the cash up front, so you pay for it over time. If you can relate it to something that people have experienced themselves, I think, oh, I get it. But if you just, no, I'm going to give them $292 million or whatever, no.
What is your thoughts, because on the vote is actually like getting a letter of credit, because you don't actually pay anything on it until you issue the bonds later on, so,
Yeah, I think that's a good comparison. Again, I'm not sure the average voter
Is
doesn't
gonna
deal
get
with
it,
letters
right.
of credit, but they do deal with a mortgage.
with mortgages, yeah. I think that makes sense.
Indicate that we're asking for 300 million approximately, but not at once, which will raise your taxes, the $200, $300, whatever it is. This is over a period of up to 20 years. And people understand that maybe a little better. Hey, if they're not gonna get it all at once, we're not gonna get hit with that huge tax bill for the rest of my life.
Right.
And there's young people here too, the rest of their lives, so.
Great point. Other thoughts?
I would just suggest that probably the last bond issue, Buckeye, 2085 or something. And nothing has been done since then. Years ago, Buckeye had never raised the water price in the city 1 penny for 20 years. So probably the last 5 years of those 20, city was taking out of their left pocket and putting in their right pocket and raising the tax to cover the left pocket to give more money to the right pocket. So I don't know how you put that down, but, you know, people understood that after a fashion that, hey, we're already getting taxed to pay for the water, so why don't we pay for the water, you know, to begin with, and then you don't have that. But people don't realize Buckeye's grown like this without bond issues. And we're unique in that area in the West Valley because we have not had bond issues other than that one, I think it was in 1985, 86 or 87, sometime in that time.
86, I was in 10th grade. I was in 10th grade.
I started to say most of you probably weren't born. But that is, but no, it's, the more you explain, you know, what it is, I think the better off we are.
Doug, I think the eye on Buckeye is a real, is something that everyone reads. I mean, I think you can get a lot of mileage. I mean, it's almost like a nice tabloid.
Yeah, it's well done.
Yeah.
So,
And it really, you know, people read that to find out what's going on in the community, what's new, what's coming up. And everything up there, you know, that's the only thing that I ever read from the city.
Can that go out electronically? Because even in the community I live in, my neighbors, we don't go to our mailboxes very often.
Well, that may be something to do both electronically.
You know, I mean, a lot of people do not pay much attention to the US mail, what comes in anymore. And if they do, they get it in big stacks, and guess what happens?
Yeah.
It goes right to the garbage.
Yep.
I like that publication, but I have, you know, I have to look for it, because if I,
If they went to the homeowners associations electronically, could they put it out?
they may, I don't know, but if you could send it electronically to the household some way, it would get read more readily.
Hey Doug,
Yes.
we all get a water bill. Is there any way to send Eye on Buckeye out with the water bill?
But that's,
I mean, if we're signed up for email.
I'm gonna check to see if if we send out an electronic copy. I just went onto the website real quick to see if there was a section on there where we posted it on there, and I couldn't find it right away. So I'll definitely check with Annie to see if we do an electronic version, and if so, what we can do for a mailing list to distribute it that way as well. Even beyond the bond, I think it's such a great tool for telling people what's going on in the city that as many hands we can get it into would be great.
Well, I read mine electronically.
Okay.
So it's going out electronically too, but I'm thinking, but rather than having to go look for it online, if, again, I'm signed up for email on my water bill, letting me know how much I owe every month, and I even get a text, I'm signed up for
Right.
that. saying, and even if in the text there was a link to Eye on Buckeye where I can tap it.
Sounds good.
That's a good idea.
Good idea.
Very good.
I wanted to ask, and you mentioned that timing is important too, because if you do it too far out, people tend to forget. So I see the community events. So I don't know how many community events would be in that time frame that would be effective. What type of community events do we have slated for, like, that would be in a good time?
I'm going to put Amber on the spot. We got a list from our community services department just this week. So what is the list of events they got coming up in the next 6 months?
Let me pull it up. I need 1 minute, please.
And that's, as she's pulling that up, just talk me when you get to it. That's where what you'll see here when I start going through the outreach schedule is that whole thing, and we'll kind of change our focus as we go through. So early on, here's we're doing this, then we go into the voter registration page and awareness, and then as you get closer to the election, that's when it's going to be more detail about the actual projects and so on, so that we don't lose it. Because there's an election, the primary elections are July 31st. So it's like when you're hitting before an election, if you give people too much information, then they're going to that, well, I don't see the bond on here. Well, it's the next election, so we got to be aware of that as well.
It's loading. We've got our 4th of July celebration. There's some movies in the park that we do, so we could potentially have some information displayed there. Halloween festival, and a couple of internal events that are pretty major. So that's what we've got between June 1st and 11/5, November 5th.
And I'm thinking, just hearing that the movies in the park, the videos that we do, they could, before the movie starts, that video can play and then go into it, so.
That would be great.
Would be great, yeah.
All right, moving on to kind of the schedule to go through, like we said, because it is very important. May is, if council does it, we'll do a news release so the press and the media are aware of that kind of stuff. We'll update our election pages so that, assuming council does a specific rate, we would update the bond pages to have that rate, the calculations and so on that they can do. Our project sheets will be updated to make sure that it's the projects that are actually in the bond issue, so that everything you see on the city's website matches what the actual recommendation in the approved bond issue is from council. One thing before I leave here that I'll ask all of you, Tanya will be sending an email out to you asking if it is okay for us to give out your information for a media contact. Because after we do this, the media may want to talk to individual members of the committee, and we don't want to give a reporter your name or number unless you're okay with that. So we will send something out to everybody, and then you'll be able to respond back and yes or no, and whether it's by phone, email, whatever your preference will be. So you'll get that in an email, and we'll look for that. June and July, that's where we'll hit the first Buckeye article about registration. The videos is when we'll start in June and July. August and September, again, more of that continuation of that. As we get into September and October, that's where we're going to really start to get into the meat of it, because now the publicity pamphlets are going to hit people's houses at the beginning of October. A few days later, they're going to get their early ballots, and a large percentage of people vote on that mail-in ballot, and most of them get it, fill it out, stick it in the envelope, and go. So anything after that first couple weeks of October, those people have already voted. So you got to make sure we're hitting at that exact right time so people are aware of what that is. I put public meetings, and that gets to, if there are public meetings, the city will go to them and attend and have the information provided to the different ones. We will do a presentation to our Planning and Zoning Commission, our Youth Commission, any commissions that the city has. Potentially have a dedicated public meeting on the bond, but I'm not sure about that, because our public meetings generally have the amount of citizen involvement like this one does. We've had nobody show up at it. We've had public meetings here and other places I've worked where there's 15, 20 staff members, and maybe one member of the public who just saw a bunch of cars and came in to see what was going on. So, public meetings are not the way that we get stuff done.
Hey, Doug?
Yes.
Has Buckeye ever done a telephone town hall?
Not that I'm aware of.
We did them in Westminster, Colorado, and we really got good participation. If you want, if that's a new concept around here, if you want more information, I can get it to you. But it's basically
The only
a
town
call-in.
halls, the only town halls we have been generally are about, say, boundaries or.
No, I understand. This is a specific outreach.
Yeah, we have not had
activity.
any for election.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. I mean,
Yeah.
but it's actually pretty effective. I was surprised, actually, at how much participation we got.
Yeah, definitely send me some information
Okay.
on that. So that's what would take us through October. The election's November 5th, so very little happens after November 5th.
Counting.
So with that, are there any questions or any further comment on this?
I did
Yes,
want
sir.
to ask about, you talked about you'll have rate information. Are you going to have rate that's specific to the bond, or are you going to try to combine it so that the council says maximum rate not to exceed? And here's my concern. Any rate you put out there, they're going to assume that's the cost of the bond. You know, so if you put out I'd pick a number, 225 is the council, the tax rate can't exceed. It's hard to explain that that's two pieces, that's.
Correct.
So whatever you do, I would recommend that you try to have the most reasonable and lowest tax rate increase for your first period of time. Or the one that you're not going to exceed, easily. And make sure it's very specific that relates to the bond. Because my neighbor's done that already. They look at their bill and, nope, tax is going to go up $2.
I think that's a great point because it's so ingrained in my head that I forget that it's not ingrained in other people's heads. And I think if we do that where it's like, if the council sets a total tax rate of $2, that's a 40-cent increase. Talk about the 40-cent increase and the cost of that 40 cents, not the $2, because
And that's
they're
also
two separate
important because
things.
they're not voting on the $1.60.
Correct.
That's going to happen
Regardless.
regardless.
Correct, that's a great point.
Yep.
All right, that is the last of this item then.
Okay. Okay, I've already thanked all of you, our committee members, for your work, and I think I would like to thank the people that have helped us, like Doug, Bill, if he's awake, Tanya, Scott, he's getting anxious to go. Amber, okay. Kevin, hello Kevin, you're out there, thank you. Deanna, you've been great,
Thank you.
has she not?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. You guys have been wonderful to work with.
And of course, Vice Chairman Goodman, Vice Mayor, I'm sorry, we sent him to France while we were having this meeting.
Oh.
We didn't pay for it, he did. That's why he was gone. So thank you all for your leadership and help. I appreciate that very much. And then I have a note here says, Doug, do you have anything to add? You had your hand up, Doug.
I would like to just express my thanks to all of you too. This committee actually started on my third day on the job. So next week will be my first week with the city of Buckeye where I don't have a bond committee sitting there. It's been really, really enjoyable working with all of you, and it is really cool to see people that are this dedicated to the city and want to see what's going on with it. So we appreciate you very much. I appreciate very much what you've done on this. We have, the city clerk's office will be sending out recognition certificates for all of you for being on the committee. We wish we could do more to express it, but I think you volunteer because you get something out of this, which is really cool. So I want to thank you on behalf of the mayor and council, on behalf of the city manager and staff. We couldn't do this without you.
Okay? No, this is,
It's been
I
fun.
told you last week, this has been a good committee. And all of you, I was on the committee with Councilman Goodman to select all of you. And the questions we ask each one of you, if you've ever wondered, was everyone exactly the same question. And so it was interesting, your response and such. And then for you to stay, as all these meetings that we have had, and there's issues where you couldn't, obviously, and that's good. But the other side of that, it's been a good committee. And I really appreciate, tell you that time and again, all of you for being a part of it. And you really committed to it, you did it, and you even visited with it. And I was sitting here thinking about you earlier. When we interviewed you, you said that I've never been on a committee, and that my dad did it, and I thought, well, I would like to try. And you have done very well. You tell your dad you're proud. Okay, so this is our final Buckeye Bond Committee meeting, and next month, May 7th.
May 7th is the work session. May 21st is the council on the call of election.
Okay, and so I'm going to say with no further business tonight, this meeting is adjourned.
Oh, he has something to say.
Before you adjourn,
Okay.
we'll thank all of you from the dais on May 21st. I don't know that you'll all be there, so I just want to express my thanks. Add it to all the kudos that you've gotten so far. Having been involved in selecting all of you, I think everything that I had hoped this committee would do, it's exceeded that. Wanted great conversation, wanted folks to share their opinions, whether they were for or against. That's what this forum is all about. So again, thank you very much for your time. Thank you much for your service to Buckeye. I'm very much appreciated. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, meeting adjourned.